Emmett Caldwell lived a quiet life in a small town known for its antique shops and narrow cobblestone streets. On most days, he spent long hours bent over his wooden desk, a single overhead lamp illuminating sheets of paper as he practiced his meticulous calligraphy. Golden rays of afternoon sun filtered through dust-speckled windows, but he hardly noticed. He had lost track of time in the swirl of watery inks, the delicate loops of letters, and the hushed scratch of his trusty pen. His only companions were the ruffle of parchment and the gentle drip of ink. Until, one autumn evening, he felt compelled to do something that would connect him to the outside world. Though he was recognized around town as a skilled letterer, someone who could turn plain words into art, Emmett rarely socialized. In his youth, he'd been adventurous and brimming with laughter, his spirit as bold as the ink strokes he commanded. Then the years had piled up, taking with them family members who had drifted away and friends who had moved on or passed. He felt his once lively existence becoming smaller and smaller, each day a reminder that life beyond his apartment window bustled on without him. He lived above a secondhand bookstore, the faint smell of old paper rising through the vents. Occasionally, he'd peer out of his tiny balcony and watch people browsing the shop. Obscured by the shadows of dusk one evening, he saw a group of teenagers heading home from school. Their backpacks bulged with textbooks and their eyes were cast downward, as if carrying worries larger than any adult realized. Emmett leaned against the railing, a pang of empathy slicing through his loneliness. He remembered being that age, uncertain, easily discouraged, longing for any kind of affirmation. That night, he smoothed out a cream-colored piece of stationery and loaded his pen with a shimmering gold ink. His script was deliberate. To whoever reads this, you are stronger than you know. You matter. You are not alone. He didn't sign his name, but finished with gentle flourishes that seemed to dance across the page. It was only a single sentence or two, yet the act of writing it felt electrifying. A surge of warmth filled his heart. Emmett carefully folded the paper, tucked it into a matching envelope, and woke early the next morning to drop it off near the high school's front steps. He left before anyone could see him. Nervous energy fluttered inside him all day, and he half expected the local news to broadcast his mysterious letter. But of course, no one knew who had sent it, nor did they suspect anything. A few days later, Emmett tried again. This time, he wrote a longer message, addressing the reader more personally. If you find this letter, know that you have a story worth telling. The world needs you in it. Once more, he slipped out of his apartment under the soft glow of dawn and placed the letter near the school fence. He went home, breath tight with both anticipation and a hint of dread. A week passed, then two. Emmett wanted so desperately to glimpse a reaction, he found himself scouring local social media pages in case someone mentioned an anonymous letter. But silence. He resigned himself to the possibility that the recipients had read them in private and done nothing more. Perhaps, he reassured himself, that small spark of encouragement lingered within them. Then, one overcast afternoon, Emmett overheard muffled conversation through his open apartment window. A pair of teenage voices drifted upward from the sidewalk. Curious, he knelt subtly by the window. "I got this letter last week," a girl said, her voice hushed with awe. It was so pretty, like the letters were in gold ink with these beautiful swirls. It said I'm not alone. I was having the worst day, and I just... Huh? Her voice trailed off, but the gratitude was palpable. "Dude, me too," said a boy. Mine was in silver ink, though. It was in my locker somehow. It reminded me to be kind to myself. Seriously, who writes stuff like this? Emmett felt tears pricking his eyes. A flood of relief and joy coursed through him. They had found his letters, and they mattered. The quiet satisfaction he felt was like a sunrise in his chest. He picked up a brush to re-ink his pen, a resolute smile shaping his lips. If these slips of paper could ease even a fraction of someone's burden, he would keep writing. He decided to write more letters. Gradually, he grew bolder, sliding envelopes under doors of the youth center, sneaking them onto the seats of school buses, leaving them tucked inside library books that teens often borrowed. Each note contained an uplifting message, each swash of calligraphy, a deliberate and elegant gesture of compassion. And although he never signed them, he came to think of himself as a humble caretaker of hope, someone who could remind these kids that they were neither invisible nor inconsequential. Among the students was 16-year-old Bree Martin, who frequently agonized over her changing friendships and a mountain of geometry homework. She found one of the shimmering notes hidden between the pages of a biography she needed for English class. The message read, "Your life is your own masterpiece. Paint it with bold colors and never be afraid of mistakes." As she held the letter, Bree felt something uncoil in her chest. It was as if this stranger, and that's precisely what this person was, believed in her capacity to create a life of her own design. She tucked the letter into her journal for safekeeping and resolved to remember those words whenever self-doubt crept in. Another recipient was Noah Santos, a quiet boy whose parents were going through a rough divorce. He felt torn between two worlds and struggled every day with feeling emotionally exhausted. When he opened his locker on a stormy afternoon, an envelope fell at his feet. Inside, the words read simply, "Even in a storm, stand tall. The sunshine will find you." The flourishes were generous and confident, affirming the positivity behind the phrase. He reread it several times, clutching the envelope in trembling hands. On the bus ride home, he felt a glimmer of courage push its way through the cracks of his fear. News of the anonymous letters began spreading around the high school. Students whispered in hallways and posted pictures online of the ornate calligraphy and warm sentiments. Some speculated it was a teacher, a counselor, or maybe even a fellow student trying out a unique art project. Others, like a senior named Alina Park, who had been quietly battling depression, figured it might be someone older, possibly a retiree from the assisted living complex across town. Regardless of the source, the fascinating thing was how the letters brought students together. They started a conversation about empathy and encouragement, things that had been in short supply. In the meantime, Emmett found himself invigorated by a sense of renewed purpose. Instead of drifting through each day, he rose with a sense of mission. He bought new ink colors, silver, gold, sapphire blue, and deep ruby. He tried varying styles, Gothic letters, italic scripts, flamboyant flourishes. The messages themselves came from his heart, phrases that had once comforted his younger self, or words he wished someone had told him when loneliness had been a close companion. Gradually, curiosity swelled. The local newspaper ran a short feature, Anonymous Inspirations. A reporter interviewed the principal of the high school who praised the phenomenon for lifting spirits, yet no one could put a finger on the identity of the calligrapher. On a brisk winter afternoon, Emmett slipped out to the youth center, a weathered building where many kids went for after-school programs. He walked in, wearing a dark coat, and politely asked the receptionist if he could place a donation in one of the classrooms. The receptionist eyed him suspiciously, but reluctantly allowed him a few minutes alone. Emmett quietly set down a stack of letters, each addressed simply with, "For you." He hurried out before any questions about his intentions could arise. For the next few weeks, the youth center buzzed with excitement. Dozens of notes were passed around, each with mesmerizing script offering words of hope. The kids began to bond over these letters, analyzing the calligraphy, guessing which adult might be behind it. Some insisted it had to be a professional artist. Others claimed it might be an angel in disguise. Meanwhile, Emmett observed this all from afar, grateful beyond measure. And then, in early December, something neither the teacher, counselor, nor even Emmett himself expected happened. A parent called the school, voicing concern about the letters. She wanted to know if they were from a legitimate source or if the students were being misled somehow. The principal, pressed for answers, mentioned that the letters hadn't shown anything but kindness. But speculation went wild on social media. Someone claimed it might be a tactic to manipulate teens. Another insisted it was the best thing that had happened all year, even suggesting that the parent was blowing things out of proportion. The swirling rumors sent a chill through Emmett's newfound self-assurance. He had never conceived that his messages might be perceived as suspicious. Yet he also didn't want to reveal himself and risk the letters losing their mystical charm. For days, he wrestled with whether to continue. He had no ill intention. He was merely a lonely man wanting to make a positive difference. Despite the controversy, many students stood up for the anonymous writer. Bree privately wrote an op-ed for the school newspaper, praising the letters for their beauty and comfort. She wrote, "Every perfectly shaped letter tells me that someone believes in our generation's worth, that each of us holds promise." Her article emboldened others to speak in favor of the letters, and soon the negative voices subsided. Nevertheless, Emmett felt a small burden pressing on his heart. He had never aimed for recognition, but maybe it was time to be a tiny bit braver. During a late-night calligraphy session, he turned over a page of parchment, and instead of writing a short note, he scrawled a heartfelt letter explaining that he was just a kindred spirit who recognized the challenges teenagers face. He debated whether to sign his name. After a day of anxious reflection, he decided not to sign it, but he sealed the letter with a flourish shaped like a feather, a new emblem he hadn't used before. He typed up a copy of the letter and sent it to the school's main office, addressed to the principal with a handwritten note attached. "Please read this publicly if you feel it's right." The letter read, in part, "I am no threat, only a friend who has known how heavy loneliness can be. If my shared words of kindness ease burdens, then let them keep flowing." The principal, a compassionate woman named Dr. Harlow, sensed the sincerity in the graceful calligraphy. During the next assembly, she read a portion of the letter. The students erupted in applause. She concluded with, "Whoever you are, we appreciate your kindness. In these times, we could all use more positive words and less criticism." Thank you. Emmett heard about the assembly from his neighbor, who had attended on behalf of her granddaughter. He broke into a grin, feeling as though, for the first time in years, he was no longer just a bystander in life. He had found a way to touch hearts, to remind others and himself that empathy still existed in this hurried world. But something else extraordinary began to happen. Students started writing back. One by one, they penned letters addressed to their anonymous calligraphy confidant. They left them taped to the high school fence, dropped them off at local coffee shops, or slipped them under the door of the youth center, hoping the unknown writer would somehow retrieve them. Suddenly, Emmett felt a flicker of astonished delight. He realized that by sending so many letters out, he had inadvertently taught others the value and joy of writing heartfelt words. Having reintroduced the art of letter writing, he fumbled with how to collect these replies without giving himself away. He discovered during a morning walk that the coffee shop kept a small cardboard box labeled "Letters for the Mysterious Scribe." The baristas had humorously placed it by the entrance, laughing it off as a local curiosity. Emmett slipped in one cold afternoon, ordered a tea, and furtively snatched the letters. Once home, he opened them with hands that trembled from anticipation. Some notes were simple thank you messages. "You helped me believe in my dream of being a musician." Others were more reflective. "Your letter came on a day I was thinking of hurting myself. Thank you for reminding me I matter." Emmett felt tears slip onto the pages as he read. Each was brimming with appreciation, confusion, and awe. Some asked for more direct reassurance, describing troubles with parents or heartbreak with best friends. In one particular letter from Bree Martin, she confessed, "I wish I could hug you or know who you are. When I feel alone, I read your letter and it reminds me of all I still have inside me." Bree signed with her name and left an email address. Emmett's heart squeezed gently. He wanted so badly to respond to each one, but recognized that part of the magic lay in preserving his anonymity, or perhaps finding a middle ground. Over the following month, he wrote individualized letters referencing the concerns each writer expressed. Though never divulging his name, he simply penned messages of encouragement, letting them know he was touched by their words. Then, late at night, he placed these sealed letters into the cardboard box at the coffee shop, or at the fence outside the school where the students had pinned their own. More teens discovered that if they wrote him a letter, they often received one back. The school's sense of community blossomed. Kids started to check in on one another, volunteering at the youth center, exchanging positive messages, hugging friends in need. Of all the correspondences, Emmett found himself particularly drawn to Bree's. The sincerity of her teenage struggles mirrored those he once faced. Although he never revealed personal details, Their exchanges grew more frequent. She would talk about her achievements and fears, her dream of going to art school, her worry about losing connections with her closest friend, Alyssa. In return, Emmett gently offered reminders of her resilience, encouraging her to keep drawing, keep dreaming. One December evening, Bree wrote to him about organizing a holiday art exhibition at the youth center, hoping to raise funds for families in need. She wondered if the calligraphy guardian angel would make some decorative signs. Emmett laughed lightly at being called a guardian angel, then found himself brimming with excitement. He spent the next week drafting large, ornate signs featuring swirling letters and motifs of holly leaves. He didn't sign them, but etched a small feather in the bottom corner, his personal stamp. On the night of the art exhibition, Emmett ventured out, hands in his pockets, collar pulled high against the chill. Lights adorned the youth center's entrance, and families shuffled in, drawn by the promise of a warm gathering. Nervously, Emmett lingered near the back, scanning the room. He saw Bree, wearing a burgundy sweater, proudly explaining her display of sketches to an elderly couple. Nearby, one of Emmett's calligraphic signs rested on the wall, proclaiming hope through art in luminous gold. It warmed him to see the kids milling around, celebrating creativity and supporting each other's efforts. Tables were filled with homemade crafts, small donations were being collected to help local families, and the entire place glowed with a vibrant sense of unity. Watching from a distance, Emmett saw glimpses of the transformation he'd helped spark. Soon, Bree took the makeshift stage to give a short speech. A few months ago, I received a letter from an anonymous person, someone, who told me my life was a masterpiece. I didn't believe it at first, but then I came to see that maybe it could be true. That letter gave me the courage to keep going with my art. So, to whoever you are, thank you. As Bree stepped away from the microphone, a round of applause thundered through the small gym. Emmett glanced around furtively, his eyes glistening. A wave of gratitude engulfed him, and he felt pride in what these kids had accomplished. When the event drew to a close, Emmett quietly slipped toward the door, but something made him pause by a display of student artwork. In whimsical illustrations, each piece radiated a sense of hope as though she'd poured her heart into them. A moment later, he sensed someone by his side. Turning, he found Dr. Harlow standing there, wearing a kind smile. "You're one of the last visitors," she noted gently. "Marvelous art, isn't it?" Emmett nodded. "Indeed." His voice was tight as he wondered if she recognized him. Dr. Harlow looked between the signs and Emmett's serious face, perhaps noticing the faint ink stains on his fingertips. She didn't say anything, but her eyes softened. "Whoever has been writing these letters has helped foster something beautiful here," she said. "I hope they know how grateful we all are." Uncertain how to respond, Emmett cleared his throat. "I think they do," he said softly. She gave a small nod, then turned toward a volunteer who called her name. "Have a good evening," she with Emmett before heading away. Emmett could feel his heart pounding. He contemplated whether it was safe to linger. Instead, he made his way outside, the cold air biting his cheeks. In the parking lot, he paused one last time. Through the glass doors, he could see Bree, her parents, hugging her. A wave of satisfaction coursed through him, knowing that the teen who'd once felt insecure was now standing confidently, her artwork admired by so many. In the weeks that followed, the letters continued, though Emmett carefully balanced how much he revealed. By midwinter, the fiasco of parental suspicion had faded, replaced by community-wide appreciation. A rumor even circulated about the possibility of the letters being included in a local time capsule, precious glimpses of a moment when calligraphy and kindness intersected to stir hope in young hearts. Huddled in his cozy apartment on a snowy night, Emmett felt less alone than he had in decades. The Instagram accounts and hashtags swirling around the letters didn't matter as much to him as the private knowledge that he'd made a difference. It was a soft, rolling satisfaction, like the gentle curves of his brush on parchment. For years, he had poured his love into shape and line, never imagining that his artistry could extend so far beyond the page. One early morning, Emmett ventured out to leave a few last letters before the winter break. "Keep believing in something good. Your existence adds magic to the world. Dream big. You are capable. He tucked them around the school courtyard, near the library window, and on a few bus seats. Then, glancing over the dormant, snow laden landscaping, he whispered a silent wish that each message would find precisely who needed it most. As he headed home, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a shop window, noticing the light in his eyes that had once gone missing. He gave a small chuckle, warmed by the knowledge of what he'd accomplished. No longer just an invisible calligrapher, he had become a beacon, albeit a hidden one, to the town's younger generation. In helping them discover hope, he had, in turn, rediscovered his own. That evening, after tidying his workspace, he sat down with fresh parchment and swirling jade ink. He composed a final letter for Bree, acknowledging how her courage to showcase her art had inspired him. Though he wouldn't sign his full name, he wrote, "Never doubt that your words, your brushstrokes, your entire being can change lives, including your own." He sealed the envelope with his feather motif, determination radiating through each graceful curve of the calligraphy. Then, carefully, he placed the letter into his bag, prepared to leave it at the coffee shop bar. For a man who had once believed his days of connection were over, he felt love for life in every stroke of the ink. On a crisp dawn, Emmett left his apartment building, steps echoing on the cobblestone. He planned to deliver the letter, maybe linger to see if there were more waiting for him. The sun was just climbing over the horizon, brushing the sky with shades of pink and gold. A handful of early risers bustled about, but none seemed to pay him any mind. At the coffee shop, he found the cardboard box brimming with envelopes, some in bright colors, others plain. His heart skipped a beat. The alternate side of loneliness was connection, and he had discovered that the two sides were never as distant as they seemed. After gently placing Bree's letter inside, he gathered the new stack of notes, placing them into his bag with great care. Back at home, he'd steep some tea and read each one, letting their words revitalize his soul. He might respond to some this same afternoon, or maybe tomorrow. With every exchanged letter, another small bridge formed between people who might otherwise drift apart. It was a subtle kind of magic, thin paper, shimmering ink, and words that spoke to the bruised parts of the heart. But it worked wonders, weaving bonds of compassion through a school, a town, and most importantly, through the hidden corners of Emmett Caldwell's once lonely spirit. And so, day by day, letter by letter, hope took root in countless young hearts, reminding everyone that sometimes simple acts of kindness can bring the world a little closer together.